TV, it is the weekend preview show. We're going to be looking ahead to the weekend's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship action. There are some big games to discuss this weekend, 6 games in total, and we're going to be running through them in this, I suppose, a little bit of a later preview than usual. We like to do this a little bit earlier in the week. We are leaving it for a Friday night, but here we go. I don't do many videos on Fridays usually, but here we are. We're going to preview the games, predict the games, discuss them, and everything else. We're going to try and keep it a little bit shorter than usual as well. 6 games to discuss. We have 2 games in Connacht, both Connacht semi-finals, 2 Ulster quarter-finals to discuss, and 2 Munster semi-finals in there as well. And yeah, I suppose definitely going to be more of an interesting weekend, I think, this time around in the All-Ireland Football Championship in comparison to previous weeks, especially with the fact that a lot of the games over the last few weeks have been predictable, the earlier rounds. There are some games still this weekend that are very predictable, but there are 1 or 2 as well that I think are going to be very, very interesting as well. So feel free to get your comments in. Let me know your predictions, your picks for this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship matches. We'll start off with the Connacht Championship and with the big one, really, Galway versus Roscommon. It's going to be interesting. I've seen Shane Walsh and Damien Comer both not in Galway's panel ahead of this game. So whether that's some sort of injury maybe for both of those 2 players, is a Porrick Joyce maybe keeping his cards close to his chest, and you know they're going to be late changes. We'll obviously have to wait and see. But I think if you're a Roscommon fan, look, I think you'd be very happy seeing those, seeing both of those lads not being available. And I think for Roscommon in general, they've absolutely got a chance with those 2 lads not being available. Look, Galway still have plenty of talent in Paul Conroy and Matthew Tierney. But look, Roscommon have got a fair amount of attacking forwards themselves as well, from Ben O'Carroll, who was back the last day, and he scored 7 points on the day versus London. Kieran Murtha's obviously in there. Keane McKeown back in the side as well. So I think Roscommon absolutely have a chance, in my opinion, to beat this Galway side, especially with those lads not available. Look, obviously, with it being in Pearse Stadium, you would think that would benefit Galway, but bizarrely enough, the Rossies do have a brilliant advantage, don't they, going away from home in the Connacht Championship? I remember they've beaten Mayo a couple of times away from home. They've obviously done the same against Galway as well. So, and do you know what I think as well? I actually think Roscommon have a better, I think they'll give Galway a closer game than I think Mayo will in the Connacht final. And the main reason why I think that is because I think Galway, probably this early on in the Connacht Championship, they're probably saving their peak for a little bit later on. And I think for Roscommon, this is a massive game for them, because if they can come through this, look, they'll fancy their chances against Mayo in the final. Look, obviously Mayo do have to come through Leitrim, but I think we know what way that game is going to go. But look, it's Roscommon coming into it. Their form has been patchy. I know they beat London. Obviously, everyone did expect that. They won that game very, very comfortably, and that was a foregone conclusion, really. But prior to that, their form had been questionable, hadn't it been? When you obviously look at the Division 2 final, some of the games towards the end, the draw, obviously, on the final day of the of the league as well against Westmeath, was a little bit questionable as well. Davy Burke, you'd have to say, is under a bit of pressure to, get Roscommon to a Connacht final or get some big results on the board. I know he beat Tyrone last year, but it will be huge, I think, if he can pull off the results. So, look, there is a chance. I think the midfield battle is going to be very interesting. What type of role will Peter Cook play as well? I think is going to be interesting to see. Do you know what? Especially without those lads being in there is a part of me that's tempted to go with Roscommon, to be honest with you. I honestly don't. I could see a world where they win this game. I don't think it's inconceivable. I don't think it would be a massive shock if the Rossies went and done it. Sean says here this year, or bust for Joyce, but Galway should win. It's a massive year for Galway, and I've said it before in my predictions. I think if Galway don't, if they have a disappointing year this year, then they might have missed the bus in terms of, I think there is a All-Ireland winning team in here, and they've gotten to 2 of the last 3 finals, multiple talents, from down to their defence with John Marr, Dylan McHugh. They've, tremendous players. Conor Gleeson, obviously a very good goalkeeper between the sticks. But look, if they lose this game, there'll be massive. There will be massive question marks. I'm going to back them though, but I'm going to back them with the finest of margins. I think I'll go with a 2-point win for Galway. I think it's important for Roscommon as well to be. If Roscommon lose this game by 1 or 2 points, I don't think it will be the end of the world. But I think for Roscommon in general, they have had a few games in provincial championships in the last couple of years, since they last won one, you would say, where it has been a little bit disappointing in terms of how they've gone out. They have lost the games quite comfortably, you would say. So I think it's important for them to be competitive in this. I think it's important for their top players to step up. And look, what will Walsh or Comer feature? Will they come in? I mean, that will obviously be an interesting one to see from a Galway and a Roscommon point of view as well. But let me know your predictions in relation to that. The other game in Connacht is Leitrim versus Mayo in Carrick-on-Shannon. And I mean, what are we doing here? I've said this multiple times before. I mean, this has the potential to be 30, maybe 40 plus. Look, I suppose the thing is, Dublin Wicklow, we all thought was going to be very competitive last week. We thought Dublin or very, anti-competitive, if that's a word, the opposite of competitive. We thought it was going to be a landslide and we thought Dublin would win by 20, 25 plus. That wasn't the case. Wicklow actually put it up to Dublin. Antrim put it up to Armagh in a game that a lot of people thought was going to be competitive as well. Key factor, both those two sides at home advantage. Could Leitrim playing in Carrick-on-Shannon, could that maybe help them a little bit? Mayo, of course, are going to have one eye on the Connacht final and obviously group stages as well. Will there be rotation there? Mayo, got over the line against Sligo, maybe weren't at their best as well. I'm trying to think of as many positives as I can to try and think that Leitrim could, keep this under 20 points. But look, when you look at Leitrim's results in the league, I mean, to put it into perspective, Leitrim lost to Sligo in the league by 22 points. Now, I know they had injuries and everything else, and they know they had under 20 players playing. They probably had under 20 players involved during this week as well. So what type of involvement are they going to have for this game? It's one of them parts of the championship where we know how these games are going to go. They really do need to try and find a way to not have these games. I know it's a difficult one because you don't want to deprive Leitrim, Sligo, these teams of having the opportunity of playing Mayo, Galway, Roscommon, but the gap is just way too big. And whether that's you seed provincial championships or something, I don't really know what you do. But look, Mayo will win the game. They will rotate, I'd imagine. Probably a chance for some younger players to play, but I think realistically it probably is going to be 20 plus. And I fear that it could be worse. But do let me know in the comments for any Leitrim or Mayo fans who are watching. Mikey says Rossi's like an ambush, but Galway too strong. Tribesmen by 6 points. I think the Tribesmen will have enough for that game, and I think Mayo are going to be Leitrim at an absolute canter as well. Another big game happening this weekend in Ulster, Monaghan versus Donegal. I mean, a bit like what I was saying with Roscommon in the sense of, I fancy the Rossies to give Galway nearly a bigger game than Mayo to give Galway. And that's not me saying that I think Roscommon are a better team than Mayo, by the way. I just think the way the games are falling in the sense that, Galway will be more ready by the time the Mayo game comes around. And they might have some more lads back in their team, obviously, as well. So, and Mayo might be going into that a bit undercooked, given the level of opposition they're playing in the semi-finals. But look, I think something similar is going to happen here. I think Monaghan are going to give Donegal one hell of a run for their money, in my opinion. We've seen Derry probably roll over ever so easily against Donegal. But I think Monaghan have the chance here to give this a right go. And I think Monaghan will have been sort of waiting in the long grass for this game. The hype is around Donegal. The expectation is around Donegal. But I think Monaghan have a chance. They absolutely have a chance, in my opinion, especially with these new rules as well. Like, they are one of the teams that are benefiting most from these new rules, in my opinion. And I think we're seeing that with some of their results and some of their performances. And I think obviously a lot's been made of Conor McManus and his retirement and everything else. But look, they're getting scores across the board, whether it be Andrew Woods, whether it be Desi Ward, Micheál Bannigan. I remember when he played Dublin in the league last year and he was outstanding, kind of seeing him up close in the flesh. And you have Conor McCarthy, you have Rory Beggan, who's going to be excellent from dead ball situations, and in particular from free. So Monaghan have a chance. They absolutely have a chance. And again, it's another one of them games that you could see a surprise. You know, I don't think Monaghan beating Donegal would maybe be as big of a surprise as Roscommon beating Galway. But at the same time, given how good Donegal have obviously looked at times this year as well, it would be a surprise, probably, in that kind of sense. And look, for Donegal, it was look. I mean, they had a test against Derry. They were out there. They were playing. They obviously beat them at a canter. But I think you would probably rather be Monaghan and have the week off, kind of going into the game, than be Donegal, who have to obviously go out and play a match. But look, from a Donegal perspective, we know the talent that they have in Paddy McBrearty, Michael Murphy, obviously, as well. Oisin Gallen, who didn't even start the last day as well, which is probably telling you a lot as well. It has the making of a bogey game for Donegal, because Donegal, look, mark my words, they will be looking further ahead probably at some point, and the big focus obviously for them will be the All-Ireland. It is interesting, like Jim McGuinness's only defeat in the Ulster Championship came against Monaghan as well. And obviously not a lot of them Monaghan lads will be playing in this game. But look, Donegal, I think will come through it. But again, I think it's going to be very close. And again, you're hoping that Monaghan do live up to the expectation. You're hoping this isn't more comfortable, because look, Monaghan haven't been playing at the same level this year as Donegal. You know, the standard of opposition that Donegal have played has been higher. So sometimes you can read too much into how good a team has looked in Division 2. And then as soon as they play a team of better quality, it can be a little bit comfortable for the other team. So you're hoping that's not the case. But yeah, Sean says, could Donegal have peaked too early in the league? They were flying at the start, but filtered away in the later stages. I think that was more probably Donegal holding themselves back. I think Jim McGuinness, look, he openly came out and said that, you know, there's very little advantage to get into a league final. I think the schedule that they have in their championship season is a lot tougher in comparison to other teams. Like obviously having to play Derry, then Monaghan, then the winner of Down Fermanagh, and then an Ulster final. And that's before you get to the group stages. All the meanwhile, you will have the likes of Dublin, who will cruise through their championship, you would imagine, and Kerry will do the same as well. So I think for Donegal, look, they were right in rotating. They were right probably in taking their foot off the gas. And I completely understand it, to be fair. But yeah, LOI Talk says here, I think Nicky Quaid overtook Jesus in the resurrection power rankings today. Yeah, absolutely. That was huge news. If you didn't see my hurling predictions yesterday with Liam White, that was out yesterday, so make sure to check that out. I did back the Limerick to win the All-Ireland, so I'm sure that will make you a happy man. Did I think Nicky Quaid will be coming back? Absolutely not, to be honest. But look, it's not going to change my prediction. If anything, it's going to make it even stronger. But look, getting back to the football, we'll go with a Donegal win. We'll stick to the prediction that I made before a ball was kicked in the Ulster Championship. I'm going to stick with it, but very curious to watch this game, and without doubt we'll be back after it to make some predictions and everything else. LOI Talk says, you know your stuff. Yeah, especially when I'm predicting Limerick to do well. But there we go. Down Fermanagh, that's the other game in the Ulster quarterfinals. I mean, it has the makings of a game that should be a little bit more competitive. You could say Fermanagh have regressed this year in Division 3. Down and Fermanagh will be in the same division next season. But Down got relegated with 6 points on the board. So I think they're going in probably with a little bit more positivity in terms of, like, I think they were competitive enough in Division 2. They were unlucky to go down. And I think Fermanagh are missing some big players there, whereas I look at Down with players like Pat Haver and Oran Murdoch. I think they should do enough, especially with the development of Down football. I think if they lose this game, I think it will probably be the first time there is question marks over Conor Laverty, in the sense of, you could understand their relegation to a degree, given, look, how close it was. You would imagine they'll bounce back next season. Look, they'll be in the All-Ireland series as well. I'd be curious to obviously see how they get on there. But I think there would be question marks should they slip up here. But I'm going to go with down. I think by 3 points in my opinion. Mikey says this game rests on Rory Beggan. If he's any way off it, then Donegal will get past them with a few to spare. Sean says Donegal do concede a lot of scores, though, even last year under the old rules. I remember the Loud game last year, and they conceded quite a fun against a pretty defensive side at the time. That's the thing with Donegal. Like, I think this narrative that is probably out there, and I know Colin Parkinson was talking about it on Twitter, that Donegal are a defensive team and everything else. Like, I disagree. I think they're a very, very attacking team now, and they're almost very attacking that they leave space in behind. You know what I mean? They leave themselves probably quite open at times. And there is when you look at how Donegal play football, it's shoot on sight, it's shoot often, it's create as many chances as possible. And I think when you look at chances created, they're up there with probably one of the highest teams in the country. So look, I think Donegal should have enough, but look, there is some concerns there, I'd imagine, from a Donegal perspective in terms of how attacking Monaghan have looked. And look, I'm hugely excited for it, because we will get the answer in terms of, are Monaghan, at the level that we think they can be at, or maybe from a few years ago. They certainly weren't at that level last year, but 2 years ago they were an All-Ireland finalists. And if Monaghan can get through Donegal, all of a sudden, then I think an Ulster Championship is on the cards. I really do. But there we are. LOI Talk says Cork have their Paddy Power All-Ireland massive trophy. Never have seen the likes of it before. There we go. Sean says, for me, down. Flatter to deceive in the league. I had a lot of expectation, but they always fall short in close games. It is a fair point. But yeah, look, we'll stick with the down prediction there. 2 games in Munster. Clare versus Tipperary should be a routine win, you'd imagine, for Clare. Obviously missed out on promotion from Division 3 once again. But, we saw this game last year we saw Clare Waterford last year, but look, Clare should be very, very comfortable in winning this game, in my opinion, with Owen Cleary back, Keelan Sexton back. I think Peter Keane has, done a good job so far with Clare. He's got the lads playing. Big win, obviously, versus Kildare in the league as well. You couldn't see anything other than a Clare win, in my opinion. So, we'll go with a Clare win there. Cork versus Kerry is interesting. Look, it should be a Kerry win, and look, I certainly will predict a Kerry win. What I would say about this game is that, like, Cork always tend to raise their game against Kerry. This is a local derby for them. This is a massive match. This is a huge occasion for them, and they should. They will make a game out of this, in my opinion. Apologies about that. Just some internet difficulties. It wouldn't be a stream without an internet problem, but there we go. Look, overall, I'm going to back a Kerry win. I think they will be too strong here. They will have enough, in my opinion. But as I was saying, Cork, they have that knack. Like, they do tend to raise their game. Like, you remember when they beat them a couple of years ago in 2020. Last year, they gave them a really good go as well. And they certainly have the players to hurt Kerry. But I think overall, like, I do have a feeling that Kerry might actually put out a bit of a statement win here, in my opinion. Just given that Cork have given them a couple of games over the last few years, and I think Kerry should be far too strong with the Gainies, with Paul Gainey, Dylan Gainey, obviously the quality of the Cliffords as well, who I think will both start. So I think Kerry should be far too strong, in my opinion. And I'll go with a 5-point win there for the Kingdom. Sean says here, unpopular opinion, but I think Donegal have the players in Jim McGuinness' second spell to play more attacking football than he did in his first spell, where in my opinion they were more fit and physical. Mikey says, not sure it's fair to Clare pretty much get a boy into the All-Ireland series again. They should rotate them once they draw every second year. Yeah, it's just, I think it's because Clare got to the final, so they're keeping the two finalists on the separate side of the draw. But the problem is Cork keep ending up on the side of the draw with Kerry. So like if Cork were playing Clare, I'd back Cork to beat them, and then that would but then you'd probably have a scenario where you have Cork and Kerry playing each other every year. So yeah, I'm not too sure. It's just one of them unfortunate things that keeps on happening. But look, just a quick video anyway. So let me know your predictions on the games in the comments down below. Let me know what you think will end up happening. For me, I do think that it will be wins for the likes of Galway. I think they'll beat Roscommon. Mayo will beat Leitrim. Donegal will edge Monaghan. Down will come through Fermanagh. Clare will beat Tipperary, and Kerry will beat Cork. So yeah, we will be recording a good few match reactions over the weekend as well. We might do a cheeky watch along in there as well. Get the first one up for the year. And yeah, we'll speak to you all soon.